Protests in support of Palestine are continuing to rage across the globe, despite Israel announcing that it would carry out a ceasefire in Gaza. Approximately 30,000 people joined a pro-Palestine rally in Sydney, Australia earlier this weekend. Tens of thousands have also gathered in the UK, with pressure building on the police to the extent that the UK government started flirting with the idea of restricting what they called repeat protests. And this is just a fraction. Large protests are continuing to pop up across the globe in support of Palestine, despite the ceasefire. But why? Gaza and Israel announced a ceasefire earlier on this week, with plans for hostages and prisoners on both sides to be released, and for strikes to stop, and for Israel to withdraw. But supporters of Palestine continue to protest because they don't trust the Israeli government. Many feel that once the hostages are out, Israel will wipe out Gaza's leaders and reclaim the Strip. They may have a point. Israel's politicians have said that they would target Gaza's leaders wherever they go, and even risked political fallout on a failed strike in Qatar. And unfortunately, hostages in Gaza had become seen as bargaining chips. One of Gaza's previous leaders had apparently said to his successors that the hostages were one of the most important things for the group. Likewise, for supporters of Palestine, the war did not start on October the 7th, 2023, when Gaza's leaders attacked Israel. Instead, it has been decades in the making, with horror often underreported by the media, border clashes, airstrikes, surveillance, and Israel's consistent plan to take over the West Bank, which it also claims as its own. But for Israelis, the protests across the world have been ill-timed. A recent attack on a synagogue in Britain by a lone man became political dynamite. Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu blamed the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer for stoking anti-Jewish narratives, for daring to show Palestinian sympathy. And when David Lammy, the Deputy Prime Minister of Britain, attended a memorial for those affected by the attack on the synagogue, he was booed and heckled by Israeli supporters. They were angry at him for representing a government which had recently recognised Palestine. "Go to Palestine. Shame on you," they chanted. Israel supporters have grown to associate the recognition of Palestine as an existential crisis, that it challenges their worldview that the land belongs to them. Many also point out that Gaza's leaders have chanted anti-Israeli narratives, and that too much support of such a group could result in a collapse of Israel. Israelis also claim that support for Palestine is actually a disguise for anti-Israeli speak. When thousands of Brits protested against Israel recently on October the 7th, the anniversary of Gaza's strike on Israel, it was claimed that the date was insensitive and that it glorified what had been Israel's worst attack in its history. Even the British government said, whoa, let's just do a different date or something like that. But here a big miscommunication is taking place. People protesting in support of Gaza are not always doing it for Gaza's leaders. Instead, the protests have been in support of the Palestinian people, who have been unable to leave the Strip, imprisoned in a small space in which Israel strikes constantly. They protest the images coming out of Gaza, which even the US President Trump, a big fan of Israel, said could not be faked. They protest against accusations of war crimes coming from international bodies like the UN. While awful, an attack on a synagogue should not be confused with Palestine's recognition, as Israel's Prime Minister has blundered in doing so. And while the timing may look off, protests for the people of Gaza should not be confused with those who seek to destabilise Israel's leadership. I had a hint of optimism, I guess, when the ceasefire was announced, but further research into dissatisfaction from both sides have caused some doubt. Israel's finance minister has said that he is deeply unhappy with the deal. He wants Gaza's leaders to be gone, and he has threatened to bring down the Israeli government. The ceasefire plans also look set to leave Israel controlling over 50% of Gaza, and that's just the start of the plan. The US president hopes to create a new Gaza government, which partly involves him and a British Prime Minister who invaded Iraq. back in 2003, Tony Blair. But pro-Israelis will say that nothing satisfies the pro-Palestinians and that their unhappiness with the deal is proof they don't actually want peace. But then again, disagreements, instability, and prospects of more war. Perhaps nothing has changed after all.